tell me a little bit about your background.
I was originally born in Michigan, in a Lansing area. My mom was like 16, my dad was 18, so they were very young. They split pretty much like as soon as I was born. My dad had a trailer and he was selling weed pretty hard, and just things weren't going the right way. And my mom's
Right.
like, man, we got a kid, and we got to get our life together. And he wasn't about it at the time. He had money to make, and but yeah, no, so my mom split out of there. And so my time in Michigan was very short lived growing up, I guess. Like I spent most of my time in Richmond, Virginia. My mom was pulled down there by my great aunts, her aunts, and basically just to kind of create a new life.
Hmm.
And our whole like back history, our entire family, it just Michigan was just on that decline at that point. The automotive industry was pulling out, and things were just really going under as far as the state. So a lot of my family got sucked into that just because that they were all uh, labor workers. They were all in the factories. So um, that was kind of like the start of the downfall. And so I went down to Richmond. I lived with my aunts. I started in private school. And my whole time there, like I don't really know much about what happened with my dad and my mom, but I know the custody battle was not good. It lasted like literally 5 or 6 years. Like most of my younger life, like it was just in courtrooms.
Wow.
And I was being passed around from state to state because the custody battle wasn't sealed down. So it was like a 30 days here and a 30 days there type of thing. So I was going Michigan to Virginia, Michigan to Virginia. But long story short, I'm really thankful that it was like that because my dad really, really wanted to stay in my life. And he had a really good opportunity to bail. And looking back on it, if it was me, I probably would have bailed. I was the only child until I was 14, and then my mom remarried and had another child, and then that led to my dad having two more kids. So it was kind of crazy. Like my only child until 14, and then all of a sudden, like three of them pop out, and I was like, "Holy cow!" Like I got three siblings.
I'm big brother now, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so
What was that like for you? Like, did you feel like a little bit of jealousy, or were you happy about it? Or
No, no, and that's funny because like a lot of people have asked me that, and it was one of those things where it was almost like that I finally felt happy for my parents, that they were able to separate and start their lives over and not let like everything that had happened like justify the rest of their lives, like because like the way that that my family kind of like was hitting it on with my parents is that it was just going to be a lifelong thing, that I always brought them together, so they were always going to hate each other, and so for them to finally be able to like be cordial and talk to each other and like just ultimately it be about me was really cool. So overall, it definitely didn't go like the negative route that it could have, as far like I've seen with a lot of kids, like a single child or only child, the sibling comes in. I actually just saw it with my dad's new dog. He got a new puppy, and the other dog is like hates them now. And it's like it's so funny. But it's like it's that same mentality. It's like you're it's a jealousy concept. So yeah, no, I definitely didn't have like any of that happen. And now, I love it because like I don't really want kids, like I'm very much like I'm an uncle, and so I've always been kind of like a parent figure to them, like a role model, someone to look up to, and not necessarily like for the reasons that a lot of like people look up to their older siblings. Like a lot of times it's because they're like, they're getting into trouble and they're like doing things that they shouldn't be, and they're like, oh, my brother's cool, and like, but like it's like like I feel like I've had a very like good positive impact on their lives, which is good, like I like that. So yeah, no, so I left private school probably like second or third grade.
Mhm.
That's when my mom like kind of like took me back under her wing. And because basically what was happening is like she was trying to go to college, and she had a lot of things going on. She was working full time at a bank, and um, so between those two, her time was tapped. So I would basically go stay with her on the weekends, and then during the week I would stay with my aunts, so they would take me to school and stuff like that. Um, but about second grade or so, my mom pulled me back and took me out of private school. Like at that time, I like literally remember like going with her to work, like when we had snow days, and like going to college classes with her, at night, because like she didn't, she had to go to class and no one to watch me, so really it was like kind of wild. Like at the time I never thought about any of that stuff. I would just be in class like coloring and stuff like
Right,
that, and
right.
like, I didn't think anything of it. But
Mhm.
but now, I look back on it, and me going to college and like seeing people do that, I'm like, like that's kind of
Right.
crazy. Like what a brave person to do that, but yeah, no, so I went to public school. I played sports, soccer. In high school, I played soccer. I played on the golf team. I was in marching band for a little bit. I did a lot of like extracurricular activities. I try to keep myself busy. That was a big thing. Like the area that I grew up in was pretty nice. It wasn't bad, whatsoever. But there were like, those kinds of kids that just like every high school and stuff, get into, using drugs and, alcohol, things like that. And so that was kind of like the starting of like me just kind of like not really caring about school and just being a teenager, really, And so that was like, if there was any like kind of like downfall to like my life, that's where it started. Was just kind of like being lost, And so it's funny that that you wanted to talk, because that's been like a big thing that I've wanted to do, is kind of like shift that, like share my story because of that, so I can like give people that like oust to like, hey, like find out who you want to be, like you don't need to be doing all this stuff in the streets and stuff, like just figure out who you really want to be. Um, but that was the thing, is my family was really shoving me into school. So that was the thing, like they were shoving me into college, you got to get good grades in high school and this and that. And like, I didn't care, like my dad was a plumber, my mom had a degree, but it took her like 10 years to get the degree. And the job that she had, she got before she had the degree. So I just didn't put two and two together, that like, I was like, I don't see that as worth it. What do you mean?
Right.
And and I wasn't good at school. I really struggled with it. And so that was like a big challenge for me, was really accepting the fact that, college was a good fit for me. And then so because of that, I didn't really like, choose college for what I should have choose it for. I went to Coastal Carolina, like at the time it was the number one party school in the country. Like, I mean,
Is that what
I
is that
did,
why you chose
yeah,
it?
long story short, I didn't go there for school, so but there was a lot of things that helped me out get there. It helped me get there. Like, I got in-state tuition because I could study marine science, and Virginia didn't offer a marine science program. And I really loved the water, I loved the surf. I loved to dive and spearfish, and just love the water. Like grew up going to the Caribbean every winter. So I spent a lot of time, whether it was in the Caribbean or at Virginia Beach, I was always, at least like trying to run down to Virginia Beach for the weekend. So that's like really what the drive was, to go to Coastal. I wanted to live on the beach, and ultimately run away from Richmond. Like, I knew if I was gonna stay in Richmond, like I was gonna end up either dead or in prison. Like I was going through a time where like I was selling a lot of drugs, and it was just like it wasn't right, and like I had a lot of really close calls, being pulled over with a lot of weed in my car, and for some reason they didn't search the car, just a lot of those incidents where I was like, man, like I'm really gonna screw up. But the problem was, I had it in my mind that, I was going to go to college. I was going to change my life. I didn't want to fall into that trap. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, and ultimately didn't want to waste a bunch of money. And so I went to college, and the first couple of weeks, I was really gung ho about it. But the thing that threw me off is the first night I got there, like literally the first night, I got an alcohol ticket, and And the reason was is because we were at an off campus apartment complex, and we were standing out front. And turns out you couldn't drink outside, you know. So they come, like the police come by or whatever, and they give us tickets to open alcohol outside. And so I was like, man, you know, like that's already kind of got me, you know. But I didn't let that, you know, like I never heard anything about it. And so a couple weeks go by, my mom calls me and she's like, Michael, you know, I got this thing in the mail saying that you were, you know, you had alcohol. Like, what are you doing? You know, like, and you could tell, you know, she was just really, really pissed. She was really upset with me. And so at that point, I was just like, man, you know, I'm already screwing up, you know, like what the heck? And I hadn't even been there for a semester, you know, like, you know, at this point. And so when she had called me, I had already had another write up. So like she was calling me about the first one and hadn't even got the second one, you know? And so I'm just like really thinking, you know, like, dude, what am I doing, you know? And so long story short, that just, you know, it was like just straight down a hill. And I ended up getting arrested at the end of the first semester for a possession charge. And so that got me suspended. And I came back home, and at the time my mom was going through a divorce, and there was just a lot of things going on. And so I came back home, lived with my mom for like 6 months, got a job, you know, at the golf course that I worked at in high school. And you know, that was like a real big turnaround right there, because it was the first like eye-opening experience that I had, like that I'm not invisible, you know, like that like I can get in trouble, you know, because previously, like I was mentioning, I had all these incidents happen where I had like close run-ins, but nothing ever happened, you know. And my mom never caught me doing anything in high school, you know. I was a very good kid because my mom was very, very strict. Like I'd never wanted to do anything because I knew she was going to kill me, you know.
Right.
But yeah, so that was kind of like the first like incident that got me tied up. Yeah.
What was the catalyst that got you into drugs?
Yeah, so I think it actually all started, you know, like with tobacco. Not smoking cigarettes. I actually started like chewing tobacco.
Mhm.
And so I hung out with like not like redneck kids, you know, but country kids. Like
Right.
where we lived was like on the outskirts of the suburbs. So, you know, like we had kids that went to our school that had farms and all kinds of shit, you know. So
Mhm.
it was a very like we also had like a little bit of city school, you know, city life stuff, and then we had like the farmers, you know.
Right,
Um,
right.
but so you know, I always hung out with those guys. You know, I love to go run around their property, and you know, it was just a blast. They had go-karts and like they raced stock cars, and you know, it was just a lot of fun. But being tied around them, you know, like a lot of them like were into chewing tobacco and smoking cigarettes, and they were just kind of rebels, you know, like they
Right.
were just kind of like, you know, we don't really care about this like other life that's going on the other side of these city limits, you know. Like this is our life over here. I think I was probably like 14 or 15. I would say probably 15. It was like sophomore year of high school. And we were in my neighborhood actually. We weren't out on the farms or anything. And yeah, someone just like, hey, you know, like I got some marijuana, I got some pot, like let's go smoke in the tunnels in the by the pond. And so I'm like, all right, whatever, you know, like I'll go try it out. And so it was one of those things where it was like literally like who you're surrounded by type
Right.
thing, you know. Like I don't think I would have ever done that if I wasn't with those people at that time, you know. And so that was like kind of an interesting experience, because reflecting back on that incident, it's like, wow, that could have been the catalyst. Like those specific people who I started hanging out with could have been the catalyst as to how I even got here today. And
Right.
that was like a big eye-opening experience for me, because you know your parents always tell you, you know, like you gotta stop hanging out with those kids, you know, like they're gonna ruin your life and blah blah blah. And like I mean, it could have happened, you know. So
Absolutely. When did you go from like just doing it every so often to selling it?
yeah, so that was pretty quick move. So I didn't have a job at that time, you know. My mom never gave me any money. Like I didn't have allowance or anything like that. Like if I wanted to make money, I had to like work for it, you know. Like I had to like go do something. Like I had to like build something on the house, or like do some like real stuff, or go shovel someone's yard, or do something like that. Like there wasn't like a, hey mom, like I want to go eat with my friends tonight, it's gonna be $10. She would be like, no, like, do you have $10? No. Okay, then you're not going, so that was kind of the thing, is like, but it's kind of funny because like out of all those guys that I like sold weed with, I'm the only one that like got into like business. But yeah, so that whole experience, like that was like really quick, because like as soon as I started seeing money come in, it was just like game over. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And I got a job. I ended up getting a job at the golf course because I wanted, I had all this money coming in. I wanted to go like buy new shoes and stuff like that, but like I couldn't do that because my mom would be like, well, where'd the money come from? Like how'd you do that? And she was already like questioning me about like, how are you like getting food, and like, why aren't you hungry tonight? Like, did you not eat dinner? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're not hungry? And like, I would have gone out to eat with my friends, so I didn't want to eat dinner. I'm like, I'm already full. Like, what do you mean? And so like that was like a wild time, because like there was quite a few times where she got like real close to catching me, and like I almost thought she knew, like, and she didn't like just like she didn't want to like tell me, like she didn't want to like catch me, like almost that she didn't want to accept that I was actually doing that. That period was like pretty quick, because that was like probably a 2-year stint of being at home in high school, selling weed pretty hard. And I never really had like crazy amounts at the house or anything like that. But it was just flipping it like crazy. But then, like I said, like when I went to college, like, I quit all that stuff. I was just like, I'm not taking this life down there.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, so that was like kind of 2 years of just make as much money as I can and stay under the radar, and hopefully I don't get caught, and like I'm gonna end it here.
Right.
That's kind of how it went. Yeah.
And academically, like, how did you feel, or how are you doing in school? Like, were you just getting by, or just,
Yeah, so, and you're talking about high school, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so in high school, my freshman and sophomore year, I was very, very focused on, I gotta do amazing in school so I can get a good go to a good college. I really wanted to go to Virginia Tech. I love the Hokies, like I was a very big like Hokies fan when I was in high school. I'm actually like a huge Michigan State fan. That's
Mhm.
where I really wanted to go, but I hated the state of Michigan, so so there was no way I was going up there. And long story short, I was really focused on Virginia Tech, and I went and toured it, and man, there was just like a bunch of like really really smart kids, and that's like the confidence. Like I seen all these like nerdy looking kids, and I'm like, man, there's no way in hell I'm gonna get in here. Like these people are trying to be engineers and stuff. But the crazy thing is like I wasn't bad in school. The difference was is like I was good for my classes, but I just did the basic classes. I didn't do the honors stuff. I didn't do the AP classes and things like that. And so that's what kind of set me up for failure as far as the schools I wanted to get into, because a big school like Virginia Tech, that's all they cared about. They wanted to see how you did on AP classes, and like those were college level classes. They didn't care about what you were doing in your high school class. So the fact that I didn't try and do AP classes, even though I had the ability to, is what kind of like threw them off of me, because it was just like a prestigious thing. They were like, why didn't you even apply? And it's like, well, I didn't want to. But yeah, so going into the college acceptance stuff, like touring schools, like I toured a bunch of schools in Virginia, and then the last school I toured was Coastal Carolina. And
Mhm.
so my junior year, I applied for early acceptance, and so like I was accepted to Coastal before I even started my senior year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I checked out. I'm like, I'm done.
You're
Like
like, hey, I'm
I'm
accepted
like,
to
what the
somewhere.
hell? Like, yeah. So I'm like, I'm out.
How do you feel about the education system, in the sense of, like, you know, the way it is now? Well, the way it has always been, standardized testing and things like that. do you find, and maybe in the school that you went to, that you were able to be more creative, or that it was more of like just, go in, learn, take a test, check out? Like,
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So, yeah, no, I didn't vibe with the system at all. In fact, like my tattoo artist, the guy that's done all my tattoos, he come up with this quote, and it's like, if the system fails you, then create your own. And that's exactly how I feel about it. Like the system failed me, like it was trying to make me a person that me personally was trying to like just push it away so hard, and because of that, I was gonna be a failure, and so
right,
like that's kind of the things that really that I really don't like about the school system, is that it's really like set up to teach you a bunch of things that aren't relevant to life. In fact, like I'm actually even thinking about, like, I've been putting notes together for a book that I want to write, and it's going to be like, I want it to be like a letter to my little brother. Like these are all the principles and concepts that I've learned over the last 10 years that I should have been taught in school, but they didn't teach me. So I want to teach them to you while you're 15 so you can get ahead in life. And so like that's kind of the thing, is like, like the credit, like like how to save money, how to write a check, like all these things that I had to figure out on my own. That's like, why didn't somebody teach me this? And I think that's the thing, is if they would make school that or the system about like real life principles, and people would be interested in being there. But because it's like just about like outdated stuff, it's just nobody's interested. I really think, like, I always like kind of joke, like, they're creating us to be sheep. Like that's kind of how it is. And like in reality, like, if they talked about, like how to like identify like your why, like you were saying, and stuff like that, you probably have a lot less of these kids too that are just like in school just stuck. Like I see so many kids like in my brother's classes and stuff, and man, they just look like they're just lost. Like they have no idea what's going on, they have no social skills. It's like, it's terrible. And
Mhm.
like with the pandemic, and with how kids are with video games now, it's just becoming worse and worse. Like, when I was a kid, like, man, when the neighborhood lights came on, that's when we had to be home. And like when the neighborhood lights went off, we could go outside in the morning. Like that's how we like, we're outside all day every day. Like my little brother doesn't even go out. Like he just plays video games. But I think that's like, those are like a lot of things that need to be addressed. Like, the mindset has been huge for me. Once, like, aside from everything, like once I developed like the mindset, man, it's been a game changer. And that's only really come in the last year. Like, and I mean, for so long I struggled, like with business and all this stuff, like I didn't really make anything for a long time. And then I dialed in on like my mindset, like my purpose, like, just living life with intent. And everything just started to really, really flow together, like it was crazy. And even now, like thinking on it, I'm like, wow, this is still crazy that this is actually happening. But that's like what I really can like delegate that to, or dedicate that to, is like the mindset, and like just me kind of like programming as to like what I want in life. But that's like what I feel like kids miss out on, is like they come into school, they're forced into school, college and things like this, and just to like live a life for someone else most of the times, like that's how it was for me. I was in college living a life for my parents, that's what they wanted me to do. It wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
It honestly blows my mind that it's like this still, just because it's been like this for so long. Like, I mean, I'm 25, like, I mean, that's 25 years right there that it's been like this. And there's zillions of other years that it's been like this before, but yeah, no, it's really crazy to me, the whole concept of the how the system operates, and even just, like funneling people into college. Like I think it's me personally, I think it's the worst idea you can make. I mean, unless you want to be a doctor, or, something that directly needs it, it's the worst idea you can make. I mean, and like the way that I always describe it is, if I walk into Wells Fargo, I mean, I have a business that's pushing 7 figures a year. And if I walk into Wells Fargo, they will not give me a $250,000 loan. It could be a business loan, it could be anything. They don't care. But I could walk into Wells Fargo and ask for $250,000 for student loans. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, no problem."
Right.
Or government loans. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, here you go, 500,000."
Right.
So I mean, that's what's crazy to me. Like that right there is just not right. I came back to school for the second semester, or I mean, after I gotten suspended, and just completely changed everything. Like I was like kind of like getting into entrepreneurship and personal development, and like completely like 360 my life. The only thing that was still kind of holding me back remotely was like my roommates in college, and
Right.
because they were still like they were kind of lunatics, but they supported what I was doing. They knew what I was doing, and they supported me for trying to do something different. And
Mhm.
like at that point, like when I came back to school, I was mentally like, this isn't what I'm here to do. Like I was like checked out of school. I didn't care about school. I had like some side hustles I was working on, and that's really all I was focused on. I had a full-time job at Nautica, at the retail store in the outlets down there in Myrtle Beach. And between that and me trying to focus on my side hustle, just there wasn't time for school.
Right.
And so that was kind of like the downfall with school. So this is where it really gets interesting, because my life was like really, really changing. Like I mean, I was really happy with myself. And so craziest thing happened, man. I'm sitting in the library, I'm studying. It's like 6 p.m. I would have never been sitting in the library studying at 6 p.m. ever in my life. And man, my roommates called me and they're like, "Yo, you gotta come home, man. The cops are here." And I'm like, "Man, what are you talking about?" Like I'm like, I don't got nothing there. I don't care. And
Right.
they're like, "Yo, they're raiding the house." Like, like they're talking about my one roommate, like they're pulling a ton of blood out of his room, and they're like they're ripping your room apart and blah blah blah. And I was just like, man, I don't care. Like I don't got nothing in there, I don't care. And so they took my safe. I had a safe in there. And because like I was like kind of like I was into some jewelry, and like from selling bud and stuff I had some cash, and like but at this point I was completely out of that. Like my business was like starting to take off, and so I was like, I can't be like, this isn't what entrepreneurs do. Like that's how I was like starting to position myself, like this isn't what successful people do. And like that's how I was like starting to change that mindset. I had my safe, and the next day, I mean, the cops were there forever. I camped out in the library for hours. Like I'm not going home.
Going there.
Yeah. So I finally ride my bike home, and I'm like, ride it like like my head over my shoulder, and pull up to the house. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't hear anything from the cops. The only thing I knew is they arrested both my roommates, and so I was like, oh man, I don't know what's gonna happen. So I get there, I walk inside. I'll never forget, man. There must have been like 15 pieces of paper, like just spread out across the table, and it was like all the inventory that they had taken out of the house. And it was just so much paraphernalia and just like crazy stuff. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. I didn't even realize all this was in here. And, like a lot of it came out of my room. And I was just like, man, they got me, like, damn. And so it was crazy, like the next day, I skipped my classes because I was paranoid the cops were looking for me. And so I get a call from, Chatham County police, or not Chatham County, that I'm in Savannah, this is Chatham County here. Um, but Conway City Police calls me, and I'll never forget. He's like, "This is Detective Dave," and I always remember that, because I was like, "Detective Dave," like what a name, what a cop, And he's like, "Yeah, so we got a warrant out for your arrest for zero point 0.7 grams of marijuana." And I'm like, 0.7 grams. I'm like, what the hell? Like, where the hell did you find that? Like, it's not even a gram. Like, what do you mean? And they're like, we really don't care about the marijuana, Mr. Poglese. We want to get in your safe. And I'm like, okay, that's no problem. And they're like, yeah, so we want you to come in today. And or so like the conversation, like it's like actually around the same time it is now. It's like around 4 o'clock. And I had a lot of it was like around the end of the semester. I had a lot of homework due at midnight. And for a like a math course that I'd taken for the semester, and like all the stuff was due at midnight. We had the final exam the next day. And I'm like, look, man, like I understand where you're coming from, and I definitely want to make this right. and I'll be happy to come in, but I got a lot of stuff to do today, so I'll be in tomorrow. And he's like, he's like, no, no, no. He's like, no, 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 no. He's like, that's not how that works, Mr. Poglese. Like, you come in here right now, I'm gonna come find you. And I'm like, yes, sir. And so I drive up there, and I open up my safe, and well, they bring me in this room that's got like literally wanted posters around it, and like it was like literally I thought I was in a movie type thing, and they asked me a bunch of questions. They're like, what's going to be in the safe, and I'm like, man, I don't really know. I just know there's some tax paperwork that I need, for filing taxes, so I appreciate it if I could get it back. They're like, yeah, if there's nothing in there, you can have it back. So I opened it up, and man, you could tell, they were like, man, they really thought they had me. But
Right.
long story short, they give me the safe, they let me go. And, I thought I was good. I was like, perfect. The police let me go. They dropped my charges through the county right there. They never sent me to court or anything. And, so I thought I was good. And it's the end of the semester. So like 2 days later, I get an email from the dean. And I'm like, man, what the hell? Like, this was off campus, campus police didn't come, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so the dean wants to meet with me. I'm like, perfect. So I go in there to meet with them. I super positive. I never even flinched about it. Didn't even tell my mom, because that's how confident I was that the
Right.
meeting was going to be fine. I was like, I don't even care. And so I go in there, and my roommates are like, man, you want me to come in and just be a witness, just so that way if they try and say some stuff about you being involved, I can just be like, yo, he's got nothing to do with it type of thing. And I'm like, nah, man, I don't even care. It's not even going to be that serious. And because I was relying on the courts. I was like, they already dropped it. They don't care. And so I go in there, and they're like, man, 3 strikes, you're out. And so I literally did that. Like, I chuckled just like that. And I was like, you got to be joking, right? And they're like, no, we told you, the last time that you got written up, which was 3 years prior. So for 3 years, I was fine. And they're like, we told you the last time you got written up that it was going to be it. And here it is, this is it. And so, I'm like, man, like I've been good for 3 years. Like, I don't get it, like, the court system dropped it. They didn't even, they just wanted me to come in and open up the safe. And, so I'm like trying to plead with them, right there. And he's like, I don't know, you can appeal it. And I'm like, okay, so let me get the appeal forms or whatever. They're like, oh no, it'll come in the mail. And so like the reason I'm sharing this is because it goes back to the system, you know, it goes back to the system, because like I was fine, like they gave me the 3 strikes you're out type thing. That's fine. Yeah, I had two. Yep, that was me.
Right.
But the third one,
You didn't have.
even I told myself, like, if it doesn't get dropped in court, it's fine. I'll own up to it. I'll do what they need me to do. That's fine. But I didn't even go to court. They were just like, no, it's done. They ripped up the tickets. They're like, no, it's done. And so that really ticked me off with the school.
But at this time, you were a junior. You were finishing your junior
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was the second semester of my junior year. Yeah. And so, I was just mind blown, because I was like, man, I haven't gotten in trouble in 3 years, like you guys, told me to take that semester off. I came back, I had no run-ins. Everything's been fine. I don't get it, and they,
You're doing
they
well.
denied my appeal and everything. They didn't even care. And so after that, I started really thinking about, you know, my actions, like the prior years, and I kept thinking about how I was telling my mom that I wasn't meant to be here. And so I was like, I finally like just kind of thought about it. I was like, man, I manifested that, like I just really wasn't meant to be in school, and like that was like the universe, whoever it was, just like, hey, you're not supposed to be here right now. Move on with your life. But after that, I mean, I had a breakout year that year. Like that was like the biggest year of my life. Like still to this day, business wise, like was the biggest year of my life. And that was like a while ago now. But so
So,
it's
so
kind of
take me to
crazy.
that. take me to that moment. You leave, you're like, oh my God, I can't even believe this is happening. And then um I saw a video on YouTube of you that you were like, I'm 21, and I quit my job and I made $1,500 in a week, and for I can't remember the name of the company. Is that where it started?
Yeah, it was like trading Bitcoin actually.
Oh,
But yeah, no, that's exactly where it started. And yeah, no, so I had the job at Nautica. Um when I got expelled, I called my boss. I'm like, I quit, and I was managing the store at that point. So she's trying to figure out what's going on. She's like, what do you mean you quit? I need you here. And I'm just like, nah, I got bigger things to do. Like this is just isn't it. And yeah, so I really started going crazy with trading Bitcoin. The way that I was trading it is I was like buying like 20 to 50 Bitcoins, and then I would sell like a Bitcoin to this guy, a Bitcoin to that guy, a Bitcoin to this guy. So it was like, it's crazy because it's the same concept behind like selling weed, like you buy like an ounce and you sell like eighths and quarters and,
right, right, right.
so like that was like kind of the crazy thing. And that's like how I connected it, like that's how I kind of figured it out. It was like, well, if I can buy it bulk for a cheaper rate and just sell it for a higher rate for,
The
these
smaller amount.
littler guys, that's fine. But yeah, no, I mean, I was making like $200 to $500 a day. Like it was nothing. And, it was the most money I ever made in my life. I'm 21 years old and I'm going to the bars and I'm buying everybody shots, it's a grand old time. But that was the thing, like I really let the money get to me, the ego get to me, like the materialistic lifestyle, living for other people. And like that was like a real big like time in my life where I was like really, really depressed. It was like because every action I did was to try and impress somebody else.
Mhm.
And if I had low days or slow days in my business, I would get scared like, I'm not going to be able to, show this lifestyle off. I'm not going to be able to show this off. I'm not going to have the things I want. And so that's like a whole nother section, that really that I think is really important as far as like people in life, is how they compare people to others. Like I have a real big thing that I always tell myself is it's you versus you, it's me versus me.
Right.
Like I always say like the me versus me movement with like a lot of my like motivational posts. And that's because like, I that's like if I could tell anybody anything, is like it's you versus you. Like don't worry about the outside noise, like that's just all noise. And man, if I could have like really understood that back then, man, I would have so much more money right now. but
Not
but
doing bad for yourself. I mean, so I mean, that's really important though, that, the me versus me. And I always do it in this sense, because you always have the blah blah blah, whether it's in your head or somebody else. And I always say to myself, if nobody else was around, if I didn't have to worry about what other people thought, what would I actually do? And that always helps me to decide, what I truly want to do, as opposed to what I feel other people will perceive of me if I do this or that. So where did the mindset change? How did that change?
it's interesting that you asked me that, because I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to my grandma and she was asking me the same thing. And I was like, man, I really don't know, like because she, my little cousin's kind of going through some rough times and
Mhm.
some similar things. And she was like asking me like, how did you, like, how did you make the switch? And because he's kind of at that point where he doesn't like realize that's what's happening to him, that like, he's like what I was, like a couple years ago. But but I don't know. I mean, I think like the biggest thing was for me was like when the business went under, I just kind of realized that nobody really cared, like nobody cared that my business went under. Nobody really cared that I was making all that money at one point, and that was like a really big thing for me to accept, is that nobody cared. Nobody cared how I thought, how I felt, like nobody cared if I was upset that my business crashed, like, and that was a real big thing to accept. And for a long time, like that's something that I've been telling myself, is like, nobody cares, man. Like if you're tired this morning, you don't want to wake, nobody cares, like it's reality. Nobody cares,
Well, but I
And
think
so,
in that sense, though, like here you are, you're up here and you're getting attention and whatever, and it's feeding that instant gratification, that dopamine
yep,
that's coming in and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, you come down and then you're just like, who was really by my side? And those people
exactly.
that were really by your side in the beginning are the ones that really care about you. And those
Yep.
that just flock to you because of what you had in that moment,
It really made me realize that nobody really cared if I had the money or not, like they weren't accepting me for me. It was
right.
because of that status that I was at. And yeah, and that was a really big thing. And I think that like downward spiral was kind of like what got me to that point to really try and figure out what I wanted, because I quickly realized that I didn't want to please anybody else anymore, like I realized that that wasn't my purpose, like I didn't care about that because they didn't care about me,
Right,
and and so like that was like like I've always really been into, like reading like the personal development stuff, like I said, but it was almost like a real big drive to go after the fitness side of things.
mhm,
And after, I'd been expelled and all this stuff had gone on, and like at that point I'd really like decided that I was done drinking. And so for me, like looking at my body, how I had changed it negatively from drinking, that's like how I was going to tell myself that I was really done from it, is I was going to change it positively, the way I wanted it. And
right,
so I really tried to like figure out like workouts and nutrition and all this stuff. And I was totally lost. Like I worked out for like a year, had no results, like nothing really changed. And I come across this guy, Corey G, and that's where I really started to understand like a lot of business principles, a lot of mindset principles, and like he had a podcast called Business and Biceps. He was just putting out a lot of content that I resonated with. Like he was talking about like how he struggled, as a coal miner, and just how he hated life, and just a lot of things that like I could resonate with at that time. And so I just like, like I like worshiped him, like everything that he said to do, I was like, I'm doing it. So when he was talking about reading the books, and you got to wake up at 3:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning, you got to push yourself, like I live that, like I was like, man, this guy is like crazy, and like I love it. But the thing was is like I got a totally different feeling from operating like that. It was like this like feeling of like fulfillment, of purpose, of intent, like just waking up every single morning like just ready to freaking crush it. And so that was like I think when I really like started to realize that the self investing that I was doing to myself wasn't for the fitness side. That was just a side effect. Like it was all for what I was
right.
building mentally. And so I think that's
Mhm.
like what really, now that we're talking about it and I think back on it, I think the fitness, the start of the fitness journey was really what did it for me. And specifically following Corey, just because of all of the personal development that he was putting out, the podcast episodes, all these things that he was putting out, I was just consuming every single day, all day, and yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that's probably where it started. I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do like long term. Like the business had kind of failed. I had like some good experience in digital marketing, and I was kind of proving that I might be able to be like a quote unquote digital marketer. And so I kind of like pushed that a little bit. I had like an old neighbor from Myrtle Beach, but yeah, so I had like a kind of like a newer friend that I got connected with in Myrtle before I went back to Richmond. And he was like mentioning like, hey, I'm gonna do this cross country trip. And so I was traveling around, I was like literally just spending the rest of the money that I had from like the Bitcoin come up, and traveled around Europe, went around the Caribbean, did a lot of like pretty much wasted all my money, just trying to live a little bit. And I went down or I was up in Virginia. My buddy from Myrtle called me. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing this cross country trip. are you in? I'm like, nah, I can't do it, man. I just wasted all my money traveling all around. Like, I'm done traveling. I need to make some money now. And probably like an hour passed by. I called him back. I'm like, hey, where do I need to fly to to meet you? Like, I'm in. And so we go on a cross country trip. I live in California for a little bit, and we started a marketing company out there. And that's kind of like how I got into, the digital marketing space. And we lived in California for like 6 months, and I came back to the East Coast to move out of my apartment in Myrtle Beach. And yeah, he texted me and was like, "Hey man, I don't think this is a good fit." It was almost like a breakup text, like I was like getting a text from like an ex-girlfriend or something. And and so I was like, okay, like no problem. I guess I'll just stay over here. And so I didn't go back out there, and I moved back to I went back up to Richmond. I loaded my car up. Say, hey mom, California's not working out. I'm coming home. And I partnered up with like two guys that I went to high school with, and they were kind of dabbling in the digital marketing space. And so I partnered up with them, and we decided to take it real serious. Long story short, we grew that company pretty quick. We were working with like some of the top news stations in Richmond, like the sports teams, the Richmond Flying Squirrels, like the Richmond Kickers. And it was really fun. The Times Dispatch. It was a lot of fun because we were working with the local businesses. And then my mom like started going through a really rough time with her husband. He tried to kill her, and yeah. And so I left Richmond because it was one of those things where, I was trying to figure out how I could kill him before he killed my mom, type of thing. Thankfully, he ended up going to prison. He's currently in prison, and he'll be there for his until my mom gets out of Richmond. But yeah, it's another one of those things where it's a blessing in disguise, because like that's what I've really realized is, out of all these traumatic events that I've had in my life, man, if they didn't happen, I would never be right here. Like if I didn't get expelled from college, I would have never taken this route. If that guy didn't try and kill my mom, I would have never moved down here to Georgia, which is where I met my girlfriend. Like, so like I've started to realize like all these things are happening for a reason in my life. Right before the pandemic happened, crazy incident happened, and I got arrested again. And like, so this was crazy because this was like after going through, all this growth and like just really changing my life. And crazy time, because it was an incident where like I was like, it was one of those like wrongfully convicted type things. And so basically what happened is they were trying to get me on domestic violence towards my girlfriend, and who like they had no proof of me doing anything. It was, but they like they came to me, they're like, hey, we have your girlfriend, she's going to the hospital, and she said you beat her up and blah blah blah. And I'm like, whoa, what the, like, I haven't even seen her, like what are you talking about? Like, she was out with her friends, and like, what are you talking about? And so they take me into jail, and I spent 3 days in jail. I get out, I request the police reports and all this stuff. And, in this time, like this is like my business is going amazing. Like life is going amazing. I'm just like, I'm sitting in the cell, but at the same time, I'm telling myself like, man, what has happened every single time, this has happened. Like every single time you've gotten in trouble, a major breakthrough has happened, like it's been 10x. Like, so I'm like literally sitting in the cell, like, man, it's going to be okay, man. You're going to come out of here like just a new person, it's going to be amazing. And yeah, so long story short, I get out of jail. First thing I do is like confirm. I'm like, there's no way she did this to me. There's no way she called the police. There's no way she would lie about this. And so first thing I did is I get the police report. Nothing even says anything about me in it, as far as her words. And so I try and fight it. Take it to state court. They wouldn't push it to state court. They're like, they're basically like, you're gonna do these classes, or you're gonna have to, go through state court, and you're still gonna have to do these classes. So just do these classes. And so I'm just like, okay, I'll do it, whatever. But it was crazy because it put me into that setback again, like the rock bottom feeling. And man, the pandemic hit, just all these things were happening. And I mean, I can happily say 2020 was the best year of my life, you know? And it's crazy because it started out in January, spending 3 days in jail, and then the pandemic happening, and then just rocket, you know, like just crazy, crazy growth. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the full circle story to where I'm at now. Sitting in that cell, you know, thinking about just kind of like laughing at the fact that I knew I was gonna come out of there like just amazing, you know, like just went like being here right now, knowing that that's how I was sitting then. Like I really feel bulletproof now, you know, like I really feel that, you know, like my like how powerful my mind is, and it just really confirms like a lot of things that I was telling myself for years that people were telling me that I was crazy for believing, you know. So it's been crazy, you know, it's been a wild ride.